why does Jamie not understand things usually?
When I was younger, I always thought maybe being different, maybe it's bad or it's not good or it will threaten other people or I don't know, some crazy stuff.
Everyone is different no matter what, and if they have a disability, so what? They still do everything they want.
It sort of seems like you're in your own world, and if I was to try and pick out someone in a schoolyard, the kid would probably be alone.
People react strangely to it sometimes, like, wow, they're different to us. They can't be our friends.
I just saw my mum crying on the lounge at home, and then with my dad, and they were talking about it, and I pretty much just asked, you know, what's going on, and she told me that he had autism. I didn't really understand it at the time, but it's probably a big deal, yeah.
These kids are the brothers, the sisters and the friends of kids with autism, and they're going to help explain what autism is, how it affects the kids who have it, and how autistic kids connect with the world around them.
If I'm explaining it to my friends, I'd say autism is just the difficulty to interact with people, difficulty to make friends.
When they're born, they sort of don't pick up how to talk like other kids, and no one really knows why or how. And then as they get older, it becomes really obvious, okay, these kids have like no language, or sometimes they're just like a bit socially inappropriate, or they want to like be by themselves.
They sort of hide who they are.
They aren't able to communicate properly and they're slower at learning.
They really like routine and stuff, so they like the same thing every day, all the time.
There are probably a few kids at your school with autism. They experience the world in a different way to most kids. You might have seen a kid spinning around or flapping their hands or talking loudly to themselves. And you probably thought, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Currently in Australia, 1 in 110 children are diagnosed with autism. So if you don't know someone with autism, you will. When kids with autism get stressed out from just living in the world we live in, they sometimes behave in a strange way, just to cope. We're going to look at how kids with autism manage in regular schools and how the rest of the kids in school adjust to this migration of visibly different kids into their predictable world.
You can tell if someone has autism if they, made weird groaning sounds.
They don't seem to be able to talk as easily, and they just sort of sometimes have random outbursts of sounds.
Not making very much sense, flapping their arms about, sometimes always screaming.
And run around and do silly things like running and screaming funny noises and things.
If you ask someone what they know about autism, sometimes they've heard about nerdy kids with super brains who can remember all of the names in a phone book after seeing it just once, or about kids who can hack into government websites or beat supercomputers in chess games. Some kids with autism can do some pretty amazing things, but it's rare, and it's usually because they're really bad at doing other things. But the vast majority of kids with autism don't spend their days hacking into the NASA website or playing piano concertos. They spend their time trying to work out how to make friends, how to fit in at school, and how to be a regular kid like you.
It's a whole new experience. It's big, it's scary, they have to adapt.
Each day is a struggle to sort of learn new things and to, put yourself out there in society.
It's difficult to maintain friendships because of the lack of social understanding.
If you're trying to maybe get something out and other people can't really understand what you're trying to say, it'd be really frustrating and stuff.
Something as easy as talking to someone could be like, it's sort of a normal person running a marathon. It's much more difficult.
Kids with autism are different, and we all have an instinctive urge to look and try to measure the difference between us and the person who doesn't fit in, whether it's someone who looks different or someone who behaves differently. One of the first responses is to think, what's wrong with them? And then to ask, is it contagious? Can I catch it?
No, it's not contagious. No, not at all. It's not like a disease or anything.
Whoever thinks it's contagious, they obviously need to go on the internet and Google it to be honest. But no, it's not contagious at all.
It's not like a virus or a bacteria, it's just a condition of the mind, and people aren't going to have things jumping out of your mind for your skull and coming at you. But no, autism isn't contagious. It's based on the one person, and it's just really chance, really.
You can't catch autism any more than you can catch freckles or big ears or a love of canned sardines. But if autism isn't contagious, then how do people get it?
I don't think many people really know much about autism.
Well, I don't really have an answer to that.
I don't know how they get it or anything, but it's not a disease, that's one thing. A child is born with a problem in the brain, which they don't get the idea.
The exact cause of autism hasn't been discovered yet, but genes are definitely involved. It may be that some people have the genetic potential to develop autism and something in the environment triggers it before or after birth. Autism affects the way your brain develops, and it usually becomes noticeable when a child is about 2 years of age. But no matter where you live, how much money your parents have, which country you're born in, or if you live in North Queensland or North Sydney, there is a 1 in 110 chance that the next child in your family will have autism. In other words, having a child in your family with autism is like a great big lottery. But over the last 10 years, the numbers have increased and more families are raising children who are diagnosed with autism. The technical name for autism is Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, and spectrum here means that the symptoms of autism can range from very severe to very mild and all places in between.
So really severe would be kids who have no language, absolutely none, that can only communicate with pictures, or they hate the world and they just sit and rock in a corner or something. And the kids sort of in the middle, they're sort of have a bit of language but not heaps, I guess. And then down the other end you have the kids that are just they have language and stuff, but they just do little things, tiniest things. They're a bit weird, not be that social and want to get things their own way. And they often get perceived as naughty kids, whereas they're not really naughty, they just can't really cope with what they're feeling and they don't know how to cope with it.
There's no cure for autism. There's no pill or medicine that will ease the symptoms or make them go away. Autism is a disorder, not a disease or an illness. Whilst there isn't a medicine to cure autism, there are effective treatments and therapies that can allow a child with autism to move along the spectrum. Some kids start out at the severe end of the spectrum and with the help of intensive therapies move along to moderate and in some cases to high functioning diagnoses. Some children recover almost completely and only an expert would be able to tell if the child had once been diagnosed with autism. But progress along the autism spectrum is a lottery as well. Some kids may not respond as well to the therapies as other kids, but the one constant in treating kids with autism is to start what's called early intervention therapies when the child is young. Doctors and specialists use a term called neuroplasticity, which suggests that a young child's brain can be remoulded to work in a better way, and it's much more effective if you start when the child is very young.
They start the work really as young as possible, kind of as soon as they're diagnosed with autism.
She'll go to school and then she'll come back and do another 3 hours of work, and that's before dinner and whatnot. Weekends, so Saturday she'll do 6 hours of work, Sunday she'll do 3 hours of work.
I know that when my brother was younger, he did a lot of therapy after school till about 6:30. So 3 hours of intense therapy after school, and then more just kind of little things at home. So it's really just all the time.
Kids with autism often need help learning basic communication and social skills, the sorts of things we all take for granted and learnt instinctively, like talking, listening and understanding. This is where early intervention therapies can help. But just hanging out with friends at school, joining in classroom activities or playing on a sports team are therapies as well, and these can really help move a child along the autism spectrum. There are almost certainly a few kids at your school with autism. Some may be more noticeable than others. Some kids will have teachers' aides helping them in class. Some will spend time in smaller classes away from the main classroom, working in small groups. Some kids with autism will work fine in class but have trouble joining in group activities in the playground or sporting teams or things that need lots of talking and listening.
Autistic kids have some things that they're incredible at and they really blow you away with, but there are some things that they just can't figure out.
I don't know why, but he is extremely good with dates. Like, you go, hey Connor, what day would it be on like the 11th of March in 2015? And he will tell you just like that straight away.
From what I know, she's pretty good at spelling, which is very different to what I was.
He's good at chasing me and my dog Cheeky.
Some kids with autism have incredible visual memory, but the same kid might not know how to talk about the things he or she has seen, or to share a story or join in a conversation. Other kids with ASD have problems with listening and understanding what's been said to them. This is called audio latency, where it can take a few minutes for their brain to work out what the words were you just said, and then what they mean. By the time they've worked out what you've said, the topic may have changed, the game may have changed, the group might have moved on to something else. It's fair to say that this combination of difficulties can make being around kids with autism a little tough from time to time, even for the people closest to them.
Well, we all try and not care about it. We just act like everything's normal and not really matter, but yeah, you can notice.
Something's really important. They don't think of the consequences. They just do it.
My life would be completely great if my brothers weren't autistic. I mean, I'd be able to have friends over more because, like, my brothers don't cope with strangers in the house.
When we're in the car and Jamie wants to go somewhere else, like to the pool, he says the word really loudly.
When we're really annoyed, he doesn't really catch on, and he keeps doing it.
But it's worth remembering that these kids are not trying to be annoying or frustrating. When they first come to a mainstream school, it just takes them a little bit longer to understand what's going on. When most of us meet someone in the playground, we might invent a game with a bunch of complicated rules. A kid with ASD might only work out the rules 5 minutes after the game is over. They're smart kids whose brains tend to scramble information on the way in. Most of us don't remember learning how to play. We just joined up with friends at preschool or school and did it. We didn't need to practice playing chase or practice swinging on a swing. We just knew how to do it automatically. That's why some kids with autism like games and activities where the rules are very clear. Games consoles and computers are often very popular because they have set rules and they don't change. Kids in the playground change the rules all the time. When most kids start school, they spend time sitting at the table, learning how to read words, how to count numbers, how to draw and paint. Most kids pick up these sorts of skills very easily. It's fun. It's just like playing. But for kids with autism, learning some of these things regular kids find easy is very hard work. Kids with autism might take years to learn the skills that most kids learn in a few months. And the thing that most kids with autism find the most difficult of all is the thing that regular kids find the easiest, and that's just making friends at school. Imagine if you had to go to a speech therapist to learn how to ask someone a question. Imagine if you had to go to an occupational therapist to learn how to catch a ball. Imagine if you had to go to a physiotherapist to practice the coordination to kick the ball. Imagine if you had to go to a psychologist to help you work out how to handle it once the game finishes and you haven't won. If a kid with autism comes to your school, he or she has probably spent quite a few years learning how to be just like you. They've practiced learning how to sit in a classroom and not distract other students. They've practiced joining in games. They've practiced starting a conversation and introducing themselves.
At first he wasn't really good at anything, but now he's developed and he's got really good at certain things.
Year after year he's just gotten better at everything and being more interactive with everyone, talking more.
He's really improved in maths. He's really improved in talking to people.
He's also made a lot of friends and gotten in some social activities.
He used to not barely ever say a word to anyone, but now he's asking everyone for information.
But now, not only is learning more words and more ways to express himself, but he's also learning how to say them and how to say them clearly so people will get it.
Imagine the kids in a school playground are sailing ships, floating around in a big ocean, changing direction and going whichever way the wind blows. Their big sails are kind of like big personalities, all different colours and easy to see. They sail around in the water, bumping into each other, doing their own thing. Now, imagine ASD kids are icebergs, floating around in the same ocean, doing their own thing as well. They're amongst the big coloured sails whooshing around, but you don't get to see all of their bright colours. You only see the tip of the iceberg. That's because 90% of an iceberg is underwater, where you can't see it, invisible. It's only when you get close and dive in do you get to see all the shapes and wonder that are hidden below the surface.
He is a very, very loving, protective brother, and I think he's a really good boy.
Whenever something doesn't go his way, he keeps going at it and never gets himself down.
He loves me back.
One day Mum was standing in the kitchen a year after she'd been told Patrick will have no language, and he stood behind her and said, "I love you, Mum." And she wasn't expecting it. And yeah.
She makes each day for me seem pretty easy.
There's often a smart, funny, beautiful friend out there in the playground, with most of who he or she is hidden from view. In a way, that's one of the things that makes ASD kids a bit like everyone else. At first, when you get to know anyone, a big part of their personality is invisible, like the hidden part of an iceberg. This is the stuff you find once you make friends with someone and really get to know them.
Be nice, act as if he's a normal student that's new, show him around, just the normal stuff what you would do.
I think some people are sort of afraid to go up to him if they know he has autism and might get worried that he'll be mean or something, but they're not that different.
Treat them like a normal kid, don't put too much pressure on them, and eventually they'll kind of come out of their shell.
In reality, I just tell them just to relax. He's a really nice kid, and you can just say hi, just ask him how he is and stuff like that. You don't really have to approach it really cautious or anything like that.
A new kid in your school with autism is in some ways like an exchange student who just got off the plane from Poland or China or Egypt. They don't know the rules, the customs, or even the language, and they don't know how to fit in. It's like everything is new, and the exchange student learns by copying kids around them to help understand the right thing to do. What if that was you? What if your family got on a plane today and moved to another country? Maybe you'd spent some time trying to learn the language and what people do there, but it was still all confusing and new. And then suddenly tomorrow morning, you had to go to school on your own. You don't know any of the kids or the teachers. You're not really sure how to ask for help, and you're not really sure how to make friends. Imagine what that would feel like if it were you. What would you like other kids to do to help you? Maybe you'd like kids to show you where you were supposed to be. Maybe you'd like kids to come up and ask you if you wanted to play. You'd probably need help working out how to get the bus home from school. And you'd certainly need help in class if the teacher was speaking another language. And maybe more importantly than anything else, you'd really like someone to be your friend.
They may seem really different, but they're all the same on the inside. They all are probably interested in everything that you may be interested in, but just act differently.
I just say get to know the person, get to know what autism is, just be nice and normal as if you normally would.
After the first hour or two, it's much better. You think of him as just a normal guy. He's not some crazy person who needs to be locked away. He is a normal kid who just doesn't have as much capability of doing things. It's not that he doesn't have the capability, it's just a bit harder for him to do it.
No one likes to be like the lonely one in the playground. So doesn't it feel nice when you go and sit with them and you get that sort of, oh, I did something nice, like isn't that great? Well, at least I hope most people do, because yeah.
I believe if you sort of get under their shell, they're just perfectly normal, perfectly nice. They're just beautiful people.
Kids with autism face challenges in every aspect of their lives, and the best way they can prepare for these challenges is to have great friends. And just because a kid with autism is different, it doesn't mean they won't turn out to be the best friend you've ever had, ever.
Oh, jeez. Okay, Jeff, 22-year-old.
I think the perfect job for him would be that he would be an artist when he grows up.
Being a sports coach at school or something.
A lawyer.
Probably a computer technician. He's really good with computers.
Anything making video games he would love.
He wouldn't be stuck in an office.
He wants to be a, not a policeman, but a, fireman.
I hope my brother can live a semi-normal life.
I hope my sister grows up, has friends, and makes my parents feel like all the hard work they put in is worthwhile.
That's just really everything we're hoping for, just for him to develop skills to just be absolutely fit in with everyone.